all in all, the big thing to me is dominating on Friday nights. Like, the camps are very good and we can get a lot of information out of those camps. But how do you play on Friday nights? Because I'll also tell you that I've never had a kid that I've gone to see that's supposed to be a big time player that I go to his game and he's not good on Friday night and then he turns out to be good in college.
Right.
Like, it just doesn't work that way. Those kids need to dominate on Friday nights, or I don't think it's going to translate on Saturdays and then eventually Sundays if they're lucky enough.
Welcome to Recruited, the podcast that goes behind the scenes with the top high school athletes in the country. Join us as we dive deep into the untold stories, challenges, and triumphs of these exceptional athletes being recruited by the top programs. All right, today we have University of Nebraska graduate, Rivals recruiting analyst, national recruiting analyst. He spent time on ESPN, Fox Sport, ABC, CBS, NBC, Bleachers, ESPN, Fox, you name it. Greg Smith, welcome.
Thank you guys for having me, man. I appreciate the time. Excited to chop it up with y'all today.
Absolutely, yes, we're excited to have you, man. We know that you play a big role in this college, high school football industry. So it's a pleasure to have you on the Recruited podcast with Greg and I to really just spend some time to give our audience the opportunity to learn more about what you do, who you are, and just, the landscape of this recruiting process.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into all of this. And so I'm glad we can have kind of a longer form discussion here to be able to talk about this. And I think that people do get the highlights of how this all goes, but there's definitely a lot that goes into all of this.
So let's start it off with this. What kind of drew you to this career, and what initially got you involved into this sports field?
Yeah, it's interesting as far as getting into sports in general. Like, it was not initially what I was going to go into. My dad is a federal judge and my mom's a teacher. But I always thought that I was going to go into law. And kind of follow in my dad's footsteps. That's what I actually came to the University of Nebraska to do.
Wow.
But like many of us have had this happen to them, I got to college and a little too much partying and not enough classes. And so my dad sat me down honestly one day and said, listen, that's law school is not going to work out for you. You're not going to make it there. So you need to find an alternate path where you need to go and how you want to, see your life playing out. And so we kind of landed on actually marketing. I was going to go into business. And I did kind of do that after college. I worked for Target right before I kind of got into sports. But kind of in the back of my mind, I grew up playing sports. My whole family, big sports fans. I'm from Chicago originally. So we got, half Cubs, half Sox in the family. So you got those rivalries. I grew up in kind of the Michael Jordan heyday.
MJ, baby.
The Bears. Yeah, the Bears. My Bears have never been good in my life. So, we still root for them. And so sports has always just been a big part of my life. And so I just started kind of doing sports journalism and blogging just kind of on the side, right? And I would write, do guest articles for anybody that would have me, or do like little podcasts here and there for friends of mine that were trying to start podcasts. And it just kind of exploded from there. It steadily grew from that to where from writing online that allowed me to go on ESPN radio shows here in Lincoln. And from there, I just kept impressing them to eventually end up hosting a show on ESPN radio, which brings it to how I got into recruiting. Is that being here in Lincoln, Nebraska, a huge college football town with the Huskers here, we would always have weekly guests on talking about recruiting. And so as we kind of got to talking to people about recruiting on a weekly basis, I was like, man, I just really like this side of the business. I like hearing about the kids and about what their process is like. And then also when you start to talk to the different players and the families, hearing about their stories in such a pivotal time in their life, I thought that was super interesting. And when I got the opportunity to then become just a recruiting analyst for a small independent site here, that's how I got there. And then Rivals saw me from there, and the rest is history.
Wow. Wow. That's kind of what brought me and Greg, actually to doing this podcast. When you talk about really understanding the athlete, but understanding the story, right? The journey that they went on, and having the opportunity to let them share that experience with our audience and be able to see how they articulate, that experience and, the benefits of it. Can you think of a particular player that maybe you kind of evaluated and maybe that wasn't on the radar that kind of jumped off per your evaluation?
Man, that's a good one because there have been quite a few because a lot of times I kind of come across guys for the first time before they kind of blow up really, quote unquote, and really have a lot of offers down the road. I think a guy like Cade Kaufman, the now Michigan State quarterback commit, that was a kid that I saw early that, looked like he had something to him. And now, he signed, or not signed, but committed to Michigan State. I'm trying to think of Malachi Coleman was another big one here in Lincoln, wide receiver that was playing on varsity and making some noise here in Lincoln, and then became a 5-star recruit. Originally came to Nebraska, then now up in Minnesota with PJ Fleck and those guys. So yeah, there's been plenty of kids throughout the years, just because you try not to. It's really difficult, to be honest, to come into it with guys late in the process. Like if they're already established and big time kids, those kids don't want to talk to you. And if I'm telling you that kid's good, people are saying, okay, I already know that he's already evaluated really well. So you really have to find those guys early to be able to A, build a relationship, but B, be able to actually be on the forefront of their recruitment.
Yeah, absolutely. So, because I want you to expand on that a little bit, because in the recruiting world, parents talk to us, they're like, who's this Greg Smith guy? You like one of the men behind the mirror making everything work. You know what I mean? So, me and you formally met after a rivals camp, because I noticed that you had showed some interest in my son, because you had been doing a lot of articles and things like that on Cam. And so how do you go about first identifying players, and then how do you like to keep relationships with players through the recruiting process?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's layered because the identification of the kids is really just, I've seen enough players through the years to where I'm like, okay, that kid either looks like someone else, or I just kind of want to keep an interest in that kid. I kind of, be honest with you, I keep most of that stuff on a spreadsheet. Like if I see a kid at a rivals camp, I'll just jot down some notes and say, hey, check back in with this kid in a little while, or I think this kid could end up being something, kind of keep an eye on him. So I just kind of track it over time, especially if they're a young kid coming to one of those camps, or if I saw him at a game. Sometimes there'll be coaching staffs or stuff that'll reach out and say, hey, keep an eye on this kid. That's helpful as well. That happens too. And then when it comes to the relationship with the kid, I think that it's important. A couple of things are important with that. I think that reaching out to that kid in the beginning of the process. So for example, Cam's situation, reaching out to him and saying, hey, I noticed that you did this, and this well, kind of at this camp. Nice job out there. And I'll say, hey, we'll keep in contact throughout your process. So then that way he knows that when it's time for him to, he gets that offer from Illinois or Indiana or wherever, hey, Greg Smith is a guy that he can go to talk to about that, but it's also somebody that can help him to continue to get that exposure. So I think kind of just introducing myself early in the process and then actually following up with the kid.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to then have the next time that kid hears from me after a camp be when it's time for him to commit. Right. Then we don't have a relationship, right? You have to build that relationship over time. In a lot of ways, it's kind of like the way that the colleges have to do it, in my opinion, for how they recruit a kid. I'm doing the same thing. It's just that I'm building a relationship to be able to tell their story.
Oh, that's great.
No, that's real good. So when you're going through those evaluations and you notice someone, can you kind of take us through what are those criteria that you look at? I know you said you've been through it for a long time, and you probably have very trained eyes. What are some of the things that kind of stand out to you to be like, okay, this looked like someone I need to make sure that I jot down and follow up with?
Yeah, I think that the first thing that is kind of obvious is kind of that size speed combination, right? You're looking for a particular size, and mostly because schools are looking for that, right? So I know that if a kid is, as a wide receiver, is 6'1" and up and runs really well and has good agility, good movement skills, and then has decent enough hands, then I know that's a kid that we're going to need to be able to keep an eye on, right? But then there's always kind of those exceptions too. Like if I see a kid kid that's, say, sticking with the wide receiver example, if he's not necessarily that 6'1" and up, but it just looks like he's always getting open, or it looks like he catches everything that's in his area, or I see some huddle tape, or if I was seeing him on a Friday night and it seems like he's really dominating against good competition, that's somebody that I want to say, hey, that's somebody you need to keep an eye on and look out for. So it's kind of a combination of things, and it varies by position. But I really like to see, and all in all, the big thing to me is dominating on Friday nights. Like, the camps are very good, and we can get a lot of information out of those camps. But how do you play on Friday nights? Because I'll also tell you that I've never had a kid that I've gone to see that's supposed to be a big time player that I go to his game and he's not good on Friday night, and then he turns out to be good in college. Right. Like, it just doesn't work that way. Those kids need to dominate on Friday nights, or I don't think it's going to translate on Saturdays and then eventually Sundays if they're lucky enough.
Well, you just answered my next question, because that was good, because you know, the film piece of it, right? Everyone say the eye in the sky don't lie, right? And I know for you, you're only one person, but I know there's a lot of analysts all over the country. You know, do the high school coach send you, huddle tape, or do you, like, how do you go about getting your hands on the huddle tape? Is it through Twitter to do those type of evaluations? Because I was in the mindset of, camps are good. 7v7 is great because you get the chance to see, depending on, what circuit you're on, you get to see players play against the top talent. But it's nothing like how they perform on Friday night, real life situations. So how do you receive that intel? And then to kind of take us through kind of that process of you evaluating someone tape.
Yeah, I think that all of those things are important in different ways, like the camps, the 707, the Friday Night Lights, all of it's important. And some of that too is like, man, the camps are really good because you get to see guys in a lot of situations against light competition. So if I see a quarterback at an Elite 11, I get to see him right next to other Elite 11 caliber quarterbacks, right? You don't necessarily see that on Friday nights. But then on Friday nights, I get to see him when the live action is going, when there's actually a pass rush and he's got to make real decisions and reads and check things out. So it just all goes into one big evaluation bucket. But to answer your question about how do I get my hands on that huddle, you would be amazed by the amount of high school coaches that are reaching out on a consistent basis. I'm hearing from those guys all the time. The kids will also send stuff to me all the time. Parents reach out all the time. So I will never be at a shortage for information on links of huddle film to watch. Like, that's never going to happen. I'll never have a day where someone's not sending me one of those, but that's better than having nobody sending me anything, right? Because it does help. Like, while it can stack up on you, it does help because then I get to see a wide variety of kids. But yeah, it's sit by everyone to be able to evaluate these different players.
So that I'm sorry, Greg, one more. So when that being said, right, you're getting a lot of tape from a lot of different people. Mom and dad think their kid is the best. The high school coaches think their kid is the best, and they're all flooding you with this information. And you got to have some type of system that you work through in order to get through all of that footage. Like, can you kind of share, like, is it like the first 10 seconds, the first 20? Like, how quick are you cutting it on, cutting it out to move on to the next, to make sure that you're at least, touching the volume of intel that you're getting?
That's a great question and really good intel for people that, like, kids that are watching or parents. 90 seconds is about the max you're going to get unless it's just great. And I'm like, man, I really want to continue to watch this. Then I'll continue to watch it that way. But no, you need to be able to grab people 60 to 90 seconds of that first thing, which is why I always think when I see people put out, tips about what to put on your huddle film and how, you shouldn't have anything bad. Like, in the beginning, it should get right to the best stuff. Those cuts should actually be, you shouldn't have, a lot of pre-snap and all of that stuff. That all matters because that first 60 to 90 seconds is really about what you're going to get when it comes to evaluating that film.
So parents, players, you have 60 to 90 seconds to impress.
Yes.
All right. 60 to 90 seconds to impress. Put your best foot forward, put the best plays forward. and be quick because, hey, like you hear here, he has a lot of film to review.
Right. And before I get to my next question, I want to stick on that a little bit because, people always are coming to me indeed for advice and things like that. And parents are showing us these highlights. You think this is good? We should post it. And the tape is like 8 minutes. I'm like, man, come on, man. I know we ain't got 8 minutes worth of highlights that you think somebody ought to sit down and watch. Put your best plays forward. Let these people know why they want to recruit you. If you're explosive, show your explosive plays. If you're powerful, show those pancakes that you're doing or those sacks that you're moving big guys around doing. We don't want to see third down catches as you're just making a possession catch.
Well, I think that's a good point, Greg. Let's stay here a little bit.
Yeah.
Can we share what is a highlight? Because I don't think everyone understands what's a highlight. Right? When you're thinking about sitting down, cutting that tape up, Greg, can you kind of share maybe from a receiver perspective and maybe a cornerback, linebacker perspective, what's actually a highlight?
Yeah, I think that making a play that would make somebody go, whoa, you're going to stand up and you're going to say, okay, that's something that really stands out. And one of the reasons I say it that way is because you just mentioned kind of that routine third down catch maybe isn't the best thing to lead your highlight tape off. And that's exactly right. Now, unless, you tiptoed on the sideline and, you made something happen on that third down, then yeah, that would be something. But otherwise, it needs to be something that showcases the skill set that you're trying to get recruited to college for, right? And this is where it also kind of gets into, I see guys that are, that play both ways, that are going back and forth in the huddle tape between, say they're a linebacker and running back tape. Well, first of all, you should cut those in half. It should be all linebacker, all running back. So that way, if it's not just an evaluator, but as a coach, if they're watching that, they know exactly what they're looking at. And then because these schools are going to be recruiting you for one or the other, there's not many Travis Hunters out there that's going to do both. So you need to be able to pick one or the other. So if you're a receiver, a big time catch, preferably touchdowns. Touchdowns are always the key in those tapes. If you're a quarterback, interceptions, big hits, showing your ability as a quarter to come down and make a tackle in the box if it's a big hit, stuff like that. I think that is really the best way to really grab somebody's attention on your huddle.
Okay. Good stuff. What I did notice too, I've been wondering about this for a while, so I'm glad we have you on so I can ask this question. You see a lot of kids doing, here's my freshman tape, and that's it. And then here's my sophomore tape, and that's it. And then here's my junior and senior. So it's all separated. What's your thoughts on that? Or should they be combining their resume as a whole and saying, hey, I've made these plays over a career, or should they keep it in those categories, freshman, sophomore through senior year? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would keep it separated through your seasons of high school football, so that and my reasoning on that is so that people can see the progression over time, right? And then when you get to probably your junior and definitely your senior season, if you don't have a spot yet, and even if you do, having those first 3 games or 4 games, 3 or 4 games of film in a separate highlight package is important as well, because schools are always looking at that as well. And so, no, I think that separating them out by the year so that you can easily see the progression is good. Now, if you want to do one super cut at the end for extra credit and show kind of the whole thing, hey, more power to you, but separate it by years. And then those first few games, I think, is the way to go.
Gotcha. What you got, Greg?
So one of the questions, one of the things you sparked that I want to ask you about is players who are versatile, but then on their recruiting profile, they label themselves an athlete. Is that a benefit, or is that harmful to their recruitment?
It kind of depends. It depends on how they're being recruited. If truly schools are saying to them, hey, we truly see you as an athlete, and when you get to our campus, we're going to see where we're going to put you, which obviously happens, then continue to label yourself as an athlete. But my suspicion is that a lot of kids want to say that they're athlete because it makes them sound cooler. Yes. And you really just need to pick the thing that you're either being recruited at, or have an honest conversation with either your coach or trainer or parent to say, what's your best position? Yeah. And then, put that on there. Because in the end, if you say you're a running back and a college coach really thinks you need to play linebacker or thinks you can bulk up and play a rush defensive end, they'll figure that out in the end, right? So just put your best stuff on film and label your position that you're actually being recruited at.
Absolutely, because coaching staffs don't have a athlete position coach. You know what I'm saying? So you know what I mean?
No, there is no athlete
so it doesn't
position
help.
coach.
So when people ask me that, I try to give them the advice of, I think maybe you should try to pick a position, because during the recruiting process, you'll have specific coaches that you'll have to deal with, and there's no coach on the campus for athlete. You know, you have to pick a position.
No, it's so rare, honestly. And you know this too, of like when you're just from meeting different kids and going through this recruiting process, like it's rare for kids to actually be getting recruited by a school or multiple schools for different positions. Like it does happen, but we're talking about, you know, the top 1% of kids that maybe have an opportunity to play a couple of different positions in college football. Like that really does not happen all that often. It might feel like kids are hearing about that because a lot of the kids that are able to do that get a lot of press, but that's not happening as much as people think.
So let me ask you this then. So if you have an athlete, you know, wide receiver or cornerback, and they have the ability to go both ways, does that help them in the recruiting ranking perspective? Or do you want to see a cornerback be an excellent cornerback and a receiver be an excellent receiver? Like how does that fare? Is there any pros or cons as it pertains to how they're ranked and considered when you see those dual position players?
Yeah, it's interesting because in some ways it actually makes it harder to rank them because you don't know. It's hard for us to then tell what their best future position is, right? Like because if they're legitimately good at both, it becomes really difficult to know, like, hey, should we rank him as a corner? Should we rank him as a wide receiver? Well, then in those cases, we will honestly like ask the kid, like, hey, you're being recruited by, in this case, say Georgia, Alabama, and Clemson. What are those schools telling you about where they want to play you? Well, two of them are telling me wide out, one saying corner, and Tennessee's telling me corner. Then it becomes confusing still. We'll sometimes ask the teams, like, you know, because we talk to different colleges, then different evaluators and coaches at those schools, and we'll kind of ask what they think their best position going forward. But then again, they're just one set of eyes and evaluators as well, right? And they may have different opinions. And so that could actually be really tricky if a player is legitimately good at both on how to actually evaluate them for that. Now, in the end, I think it does help the athlete if they are good at both, because then that really just helps you be more marketable for all those different schools. And marketable, I mean recruitable for those different schools, because now you've got more options on the table for where you can go to school. You can talk to the DB coach and the wide receiver coach on these visits, and you can figure out who you like at what position and what school. Like there's a lot of different avenues you can take, but it does make the eval process a little more difficult.
Yeah, that's some great insight, man. Thanks for giving us that insight. We like to educate the masses on our show. And again, this is another question that I have for you. Again, we like to educate people on this show. So, you know, parents, there's a lot of frustrated parents out there because they feel like they spend money blindly, you know, going to camps and like showcases and things like that. So could you give us some insight on what camps or showcases are relevant and what type of things should you not be participating in?
Yeah, it's tough because I have heard those frustrations. I understand. I've talked to many parents about this situation because it's hard, right? You work hard. You don't want to spend your money on something that you're going to waste it on, right? And so I do think that on one hand, go into like a quote unquote smaller showcase or camp so that your athlete understands the process of how those things go, just so that when they go to a bigger one, that they're not then shell shocked and that's their first time doing it. There is some value in that, but you don't then want to, you know, load up on too many of those lower end camps that then, you know, you spent a lot of money on that and now you don't have any time or money to go do a bigger camp. And so I do think that go into, you know, your Under Armour camps, your Rivals camps, those sorts of things, like that Navy All-American Bowl. Now the combine for that can be helpful, even though there's just so many players there, which brings me to another thing. The name of the game in these showcases and stuff is to be able to get exposure, right? And to get people to see your athlete and be able to either get them some press or to be able to help evaluate them or even let a school know like, hey, because this happens too. I'll be at a camp and I'll see a kid and say, hey, reach out to, Iowa State and say, hey, you might want to look at this kid. This is somebody that might fit your school and your profile, right? And so that happens as well. So to do that, though, you have to be at the camps and showcases that people like me are at, right? And so just kind of think of it that way, is that we're not always at those ones that are trying to hustle you to get you to these events, right? Like go to where we're going to be, which sounds a little weird for me to say, but that is the way that I would do it if I were a parent.
Okay. And let me ask you this. So do recruiting services help student athletes?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they definitely help because one of the things that and listen, if you're a 5-star caliber player, the amount of attention from us that you get is not going to necessarily change your recruitment. Like I try to think of like Jared Curtis, the 5-star quarterback commit to Georgia, could never talk to us and never get any press, and he's still going to go to Georgia, right? Like that. I mean, they know him and they recognize him. But the vast majority of kids are not like that. And you would be surprised at the amount of times that we write about a kid, whether or not we're just doing an interview with him or we've seen him at a camp or seen him on Friday nights, that we then get hit up by different colleges about, hey, who is this kid? And the reason for that is that none of these schools want to miss out on any players, right? That. So if we're talking about them and it's maybe the first time that kid came on the radar, or even if it is a kid that's already on the radar, if I'm at a game on Friday night, and I actually have a real example of this. I was at 2 weeks ago. I was back in Chicago for a big time game featuring Israel Abrams, the 4-star quarterback in the 2027 class, versus Trey Taylor, another 4-star quarterback in 27 that's committed to Nebraska. There's a lot of highlight plays in that game. I'm tweeting them out. I had to have heard from 7 different college staffs during that game about those players, right? So believe me, those schools are always paying attention to these things, and they want to know as much information as they possibly can get as well. So that was a very long way to say, yes, recruiting services definitely help
I wanted you to
in this situation.
Yeah, I wanted you to answer that because I wanted the parents to know the importance of networking. You know what I mean? So when I met you, I knew you were like Greg Smith, so I went down on the field. I'm like, hey, I'm Greg Thomas, this is my son. I wanted to introduce you to build that network, because when you attach yourself to these certain guys, behind the scenes, it helps your recruiting process through the exposure that you're speaking about. Yeah.
Yeah, and definitely, and I think that that's a good point too, because it's layered, because even if your son was not being recruited right this second, but he was coming up down the road and we met. And now I kind of have a bug in my ear that I know who to look out for. That would still be beneficial, right? Absolutely. So there's multiple ways that making that connection and having that networking helps. And it's why the power of networking is real for everything. That's a life lesson for everything. It's always something that people should be doing. And I say that to kids all the time, is that just going out there and meeting people is a great way to get somewhere. You never know where it's going to be, but it'll be somewhere.
Shout out to my guy, Israel, though. Israel, throwing that ball out there. So I'm very interested in what your take on him. And him and Ace played on the same boom team together from 7v7. So I have a very good relationship with him and his family. Actually, we'll set him up and get him on the show as well. Okay. But what's your thoughts on my guy? Because got a real close ties with him and his dad, and he's been slinging it for a while. And this year he's kind of blowing up on the scenes. What was your immediate evaluation on him?
I love those guys. Damien and that family are great people. Speaking of people that you talk to on the sidelines and you just get to know folks, the evaluation of him is real simple. He has gotten better every single time I see him. Yes. I feel like he's a better player. And it's really amazing, because I'm like, when is the ceiling going to stop? And I think he's got more to get. He's a kid that's really, really elusive in the pocket. Like he did a great job in that game, and he continues to do it all the time with just eluding pressure in the pocket, but not necessarily to take off and run. It's to then scramble in the pocket, keep his eyes downfield, throw a dart, and then score a long touchdown. Like he did that several times in that game that they won that Friday night that I was at. Like I am very interested to see what happens in his future, and then what kind of offense he ends up in when he goes to college and where he ends up picking. It's going to be fascinating to see. I am still surprised that more schools are not like trying to like push their way in on him here, like as we get, closer, because, quarterbacks make their decisions a little bit earlier than most. And so, yeah, man, the sky's the limit for him. I think the world of that kid and his family.
Yeah, he's a good guy, and look forward to seeing him on the circuit this year, which brings me to this topic. Because you mentioned about the 7v7, and then you talked about the quarterbacks being lined up with the top quarterbacks and things like Elite 11, but then you still got to see them on Friday nights. How do they interact with, pass rush? How do they interact with blitzes coming? And, when all the fire is coming at them, how are they responding in those game-like situations? Yep. Are there any positions that are easier to evaluate, right, in a 7v7 settings?
Wide receiver is probably I think the easiest one for 7-on-7, because I think mostly because it's I think the closest approximation to what you're going to see from them in a game, right? Like it's not that much different for a wide receiver. I do think that quarterback is pretty good to be able to evaluate, but like you mentioned, like all that other stuff about pass rush, being able to read through actual progressions, and then having receivers that are running real routes on the route tree and then having to throw on time and all of that makes quarterback a little bit trickier. Another thing that we didn't kind of mention, and I want to make sure I mention about quarterbacks specifically and why I like to go see quarterbacks in person. Seeing quarterbacks interact with their team and their coaches in a game, I think is very important. As the quarterback is a big leadership position on a team, the most important position in sports, right? Mm-hmm. We always talk about that. That's the cliche that people use. Seeing them interact with their teammates and their coaches and see how people just kind of gravitate towards them, I think is really interesting to see in person as well. But no, wide receiver, I think is the thing that the 7-on-7 position that's easiest to then have translate between 7-on-7 and the game.
Good stuff. So let's talk about a little stuff that's going on in the industry. So over this summer, right? Rivals and On3, combined, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you feel like that is going to help the recruiting process for the athletes, and then just personally, how you feel like that has helped you in this transition?
Yeah, it would honestly, to go back to that time, it was a whirlwind because it took us by surprise. Like most of those things that happen at that kind of corporate level, when you have that kind of acquisition, we didn't know at all. Like we were in an evaluation rankings meeting. We were in an all-day meeting when we got an email that we needed to be in a Zoom meeting with some people, some of our leadership that we generally don't get on a meeting with. And we were like, oh boy, what's going on here? And then that's how we found out that Shannon Terry and those guys were purchasing the company and we were going to merge. So it's been a whirlwind. I think that in the end, though, I do think that it's a positive thing for athletes in a lot of ways, because there's just so much more coverage of the athletes from our national team. And I'm sure you guys have seen this because we have such a strong national team at this point with people from coast to coast, right? I'm here in the Midwest and we've got Adam Gordon out west and Chad Simmons down in the South and Sam Spiegelman in Texas. Steve Wilfong is kind of overseeing all of that. And so we've got a really strong team. And so it ends up being a situation where we can then cover so much ground when it comes to telling those athletes' story. And then that's not to mention then kind of that evaluation team that we have, the news breakers that are out there, kind of like Pete Nakos and Brett McMurphy and those guys. So I think that it ends up being a really good thing just for fans and for the athletes in general moving forward. But as far as for me, I always make the joke that for my situation, it's very much largely the same for what I do on a day-to-day basis, right? Like I still cover the Midwest. I think the only thing that I got added Colorado as one of my states, quote unquote, for my region. Otherwise, it is what it is, right? Like I think in life, you just got to kind of keep rolling with stuff like that. Do what you do, put your head down and let the work show.
Colorado, tell our boy Dion, we say what's up.
Yeah.
So you were in the
I got to get out there. That's the thing. I do have to go out there. It's funny. My wife was just saying, she was like, so when are you going to go see a player out there? And she likes to try to work her way on these trips when I go out.
Hey, happy wife, happy life.
Right.
Hey, yeah, you're right.
So
you're right.
You guys were in the middle of evaluation when you got the phone call.
Yeah.
Which brings me to a good question. How do you guys combine? Because, when you look at the ranking service, right, you had rivals rankings and then you had on three rankings. How do you guys settle on where a player should be in the overall scheme of things once you guys did that collaborations? Because, you would see someone that was ranked at a certain level with rivals and ranked at a certain level on three. How do you guys come to that decision to say, okay, this is where we're going to start him off right now that we are one?
That may be the most asked question that I got after this, after the merger happened. So I am very well prepared for that one. What happened on that is that essentially the rivals ranking, like the on three ranking, became the rivals ranking moving forward. So all they really did was when we all became rivals and it all became one, they just took the old on three ranking and labeled that the rivals ranking. And that's what the starting point was from that point forward. So then every tweak that they've made since then has been to that old on three ranking, but it is just called the rivals ranking. It can be confusing to people, but that's the simplest way to be able to explain
that makes sense.
How that ranking went and why then there was some big differences on what those rankings were, because we had people like myself that had been, to all of those different Midwest camps and seen all of those guys, whereas before the old on three crew maybe had not seen some of those players. And so they were just kind of a melding of what was going to go on moving forward. But that old on three ranking became the rivals ranking.
Okay. That makes sense.
So I want to ask you about the overall space in recruiting, because, there's many services. There's on three, there's rivals, there's 24/7, there's ESPN.
Oh, Greg, about to get spicy.
Yeah, right. So and then we see all you guys out together, you know what I'm saying, at the same evaluations or showcases. Do you guys come together like at the end and compare notes, or do you guys like, oh no, I'm 24/7, I can't mess with ESPN?
Man, ask the question you want to ask. Who has the most juice?
No, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking because the evaluations sometimes seem inconsistent. Sometimes you'll have, a rivals having a guy at 100, then you'll have you'll have 24/7 have a guy at 256. You know what I mean? It's like, so how do these things happen? Like, how do you guys evaluate and share content?
Yeah, so we do not evaluate and share content at all. And that because it's a competition, number one. Number two, the real reason, and we want to be real, the real reason why we don't do that is because each service wants to be able to say in the end, I had this kid at 52, whereas our competitor had him at 197. I believed in him more, or we were smarter on the eval, right? That's really why it doesn't happen, because if we compared notes and we all came together after being, say, we were all at the Under Armour camp, and then that we all came together and compared notes, then we would just have the same thing and nobody could then stand out and say, hey, I did X better than my competitor did. That's what it's really about. It's about the competition. That's why we'll never compare notes.
So these guys laugh and joke the whole time and they go their own and keep their own notes.
But they got their hands over their notes.
That is basically how it goes.
That's cool.
That's exactly how it goes. And it's funny because I'm very cordial and have good relationships with a lot of those guys, because I see so many of the same guys at the same events, right? And so, I have great relationships with them. But no, I'll never compare notes. We don't compare evaluation notes. We don't talk about like, hey, I heard that Cam was leaning towards Illinois or anything like that. None of that stuff. We don't, none of that.
And that probably plays a role in how, how responsive a kid is to a particular, group, right? If if rivals have them, more favorable than 247, then that kid probably respond to you, Greg, more often and more frequently than he may respond to the others. I think the athlete probably can sense that as well, and it probably has some impact on that relationship. Would you agree to that?
Oh, you are hitting on you diving deep now.
That's something that's what we hit up for. We had to dive deep.
That happens now. Yeah. So what you'll notice, and see this, I'm gonna give you a little secret. So every single time that either us or one of our competitors puts out, say, new 5-stars, right? You ever notice that we always have interviews with that new 5-star that comes through? The reason why we had those interviews is because now that kid loves us because we just made him a new 5-star. Or if we have like a risers list and now that a kid has gone from 250 to 99, that kid wants to talk to us all of a sudden. So yeah, you're absolutely right. The kids notice that too, and they definitely are more likely to talk if you are then, have it rated them highly. And so we know that, but then again, on the other hand, you can't rank a kid like that just because you want to talk to them, because then it comes back to bite you in the end too. But yeah, that you stumbled on something there. That is definitely part of the game within the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have to pay homage that Rivals was the first big recruiting service on the podcast.
Rivals was the first.
You guys were the first.
Yes.
So staying in the industry, I want to ask you, what does something like James Franklin being let go by Penn State do to the world of recruiting? And then how does that impact you?
Now we talking.
Yeah. Woo, boy. Yeah. Okay. So there's a perfect timing for this, because yesterday I was right here in this office minding my own business, thinking about recruiting updates and who went on visits and, who I was going to talk to about where they went and the state of their recruitment. And then boom, we get the alert from our guy Pete Nakos that said, hey, they're gonna, they fired James Franklin. And so immediately, number one, that it's a huge shakeup because it's a huge job, right? And they've got a lot of big time recruits that are committed to them, a lot of guys that are interested in them. If you go look at the number of kids that were at the whiteout just was that 3 weeks ago? That feels like for them now a lifetime ago. They had like 200 kids there, right? So it's a program that recruits at a big time level. And that's before we could even do the whole thing on the transfer portal and how, their roster is going to be attacked once we get to that point. But we'll save that for another time. But it throws everything into a loop because there are so many different branches and trickle down effects off of that coach firing. And so basically my entire afternoon and evening yesterday was nothing but calling people to figure out their reaction to that news, and then figure out, hey, what's going to be next for Penn State, whether or not it's kids decommitting. We did a number of decommitment stories yesterday, whether like just getting kids' reaction to the news. And then as you see the next step of that is which coach is then going to be considered for this job, right? And so then it becomes, because it is, and it's Matt Rule at Nebraska, it's Kurt Signetti at Indiana. Now we get to do that all over again because now you want to know, what did the Nebraska commits think about this? What do Indiana kids think about it? Like it just continues to go on and on. So anytime there's a big change like that, it's a huge domino effect for us.
Yeah, I mean that was crazy. So I got a lot of, because Ace actually came to me, and I don't know if maybe it was you, Greg, who reached out and he was like, I don't even know what to think about this. Like we literally just came from the all white game, and now he's gone. How do you think that the recruiting service and rating service plays a role in the selection of talent that a college picks? And do you feel like they have an impact on the success of that coach? Or do you feel like, hey, we evaluated talent. You guys have the ability to evaluate talent. It's on you guys to develop them and go win games. But do you feel like there's any impact on how the recruiting services rank and rate players have on the success of that particular college?
Yeah, I think that first of all, every school, or at least like major Power Four school, looks at these recruiting rankings and knows where their players are ranked. And if they say that they say they don't, they're lying. And how I know that that's the case, if you go, Israel Abrams is actually a really good example of this. When he got his bump from 24/7, Iowa State and other schools made graphics for him and put that out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you know that they're paying attention. So first of all, they know they have a high awareness, because when we drop kids, we hear about it from them, right? And so I think it matters to them in a large part because of perception, right? If you're a school that is bringing in a top 10 or a top 15 class of recruiting class, your fans are happy, right? Your fans are like, oh, they did a good job of evaluating, because really it's just an easy way for fans to identify whether or not your school is doing a good job recruiting. Now, there are some exceptions to that, because there are some programs that are very well known for being able to evaluate players that maybe we were a little slower to see it on, and then they go win ball games anyway, right? That happens all the time too. And there's definitely, more than one way to skin the cat. You can win that way. It's hard to win at a championship level that way, but you get where I'm going. Like it just depends. But no, it definitely plays an impact, because then when you see, and this is one of the conversations that came out of, with Coach Franklin being let go, is that, hey, they're not recruiting at the same level as Ohio State or Oregon is now that they're in the Big Ten, or USC, who's now in the Big Ten. What does that mean? That means that they're not recruiting at the ranking level that some of those schools are recruiting and amassing that talent. So no, that it definitely ends up mattering in the big picture for everybody, for all parties involved.
So, okay, good point. And now, you add NIL to the market, into the mix of things in college sports. And, now, you have a lot of talent more dispersed across the landscape of college teams, right? They're not all hoarded within, a few institutions. Do you feel like the fan base should give colleges a little bit more grace, knowing that with NIL, the playing fields are a lot more even than they were maybe a few years ago?
So it's interesting, because who's giving the grace in that case, right? So so you mentioned you can't hoard that talent, right? So is Georgia or Alabama or Texas, are they the examples that their fan base should give grace? Maybe. Or is Texas Tech or someone like that, is their fan base saying, no, we're not giving any more grace. We're going to be impatient because I know you can go out and get the players, right? So it just becomes a double-edged sword. Like either way, you just need to go get the players. It's tough either way, because I can make the argument that yes, Georgia and Alabama fans should say, hey, it might be tougher for Kirby Smart or Kalen DeBoer to really get as much talent as they used to, but then they would come back and say, no, we're Georgia or Alabama. That doesn't matter. We should still be getting these top dogs, right? But then you could look at other schools that have done really well with NIL and say, no, they should be able to get those guys. Like we mentioned Texas Tech, like what Michigan was able to pull off with Bryce Underwood, right? Like because of all of those examples, you see like last year where Florida decided not to let go of Billy Napier last year because they were going to put that money into NIL so they could get more players. So now they're not going to have grace because they know that they put that money to get more players. Right. So it all ends up just being another way for fan bases to say, nah, you need to just go ahead and get these players and win. That really is what the bottom line ends up being.
Yeah, and so like a Bryce for Michigan, right? That comes with a nice price tag. Right. Now that is so again, when it's still about the budget, right? And do you have the resources? Because some schools going to still have more resources than others to be able to attract more players. But I do agree that it could be a double-edged sword, because hey, you got money now. You should be able to recruit nationally, not just within the state. You have the ability to go out and attract top talent. Everyone has that equal ability to do that. So we expect you to win. I personally feel like some of these coaches do deserve a little bit more grace and time to grow and develop the talent, because the playing fields are a lot more easy. When you look at these games right now, you don't really know who's going to win. There's not a lot of blowouts when you're thinking about you're seeing the best of the best or the top, equal level schools playing each other. You're not seeing blowouts. You're seeing very tight games. You're seeing very good competitive football. And And also the portal. What's your thoughts about the portal? The portal probably also helps with that aspect of it as well.
A question right here on the NIL part.
Go ahead, shoot.
So, but before we get to that, I just want to ask you a quick question. So, with the big thing kids want to get attached to their name is stars. So and stars can heavily impact their NIL evaluations and things like that. How do you guys take that into consideration? Like, say a guy is between a 2 and a 3 or a 3 and a 4. Do you take that into evaluation? Knowing that it could have greatly impact their NIL value.
The short answer, I've never really had a conversation with anyone about like internally about, hey, this really impacts a kid's NIL valuation. But it's interesting. It is an interesting thing because I honestly, until pretty recently, hadn't really considered that. And I've had people, it's usually agents, people that are representing these kids that are like, hey, how come such and such isn't, a 5-star? Like, hey, if you go ahead and can we get this kid bumped? Because I know that this school wants to go ahead and this company wants to attach their brand deal to him if he can get that 5th star or that 4th star, or hey, this school will look at him a little heavier if he has that thing, which again goes back to our other conversation. Again, these schools understand where these kids are ranked. Yes. Don't let them tell you that they're no. It definitely plays a role, but we try not to have that play a factor into where a kid is ranked, because then that kind of goes back into that bias kind of situation. But no, it's a good question though, because it does definitely impact what happens with NIL, because again, it's kind of low hanging fruit for those companies. Those companies aren't in the weeds watching this film or doing all of that. They're looking at the list that we have on our website and saying these top 50 kids that are all rated 4-star and above, those are the kids that move the needle, and those are the kids that are going to get our dollar. So I understand that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Good question.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I'll keep what you want to.
Let's go to some fun and games a little bit, because we gotta, we don't want to keep you on too long, but we do have a couple of games that we like to play. One of the games is called Cap or Fact. Mm-hmm. All right, so Greg gonna start with Cap or Fact, and then we're gonna bounce you back over here, and we're gonna go with the over and under.
For sure. So Cap or Fact, Greg. So I'm gonna ask you a set of burning questions that we get through our DMs because people have been begging to talk to you. So Cap or Fact. If you are not on Twitter or X, you are not trying to get recruited.
Oh, that's fact. You absolutely. Oh my God, that's fact. Yeah, it's a big fact. You need to be there because you not only are you able to promote yourself that way, whether or not what's going on in your recruitment, your highlights, all of that, but also you're able to communicate with coaches that way. That's where a lot of your conversations with coaches and like player personnel people are going to start. It is on Twitter, and then from there you want it to progress to the phone. I will say that don't let them keep you in the DMs. You want to take it to the phone eventually. But yeah, that's a big fact.
Nice. Great insight. Second question. Cap or Fact. Running a 40 at a showcase is smart if you don't know how to run it.
Oh, no, that's big cap. Okay. No, I would not. I would avoid that thing like the plague if you don't know how to run it. If you've never trained for the 40, don't get out there and do that thinking, oh, I know what it looks like. I can just do it, because that can really hurt you, and it very much hurt you if you run a bad 40 just because you didn't know how to do it.
Right. Yeah. We see that all the time. Kids go to these camps.
Yeah, then that does happen a lot.
In the line, running these 40s, and if you do not know how to run a 40, do not run a 40 at a camp.
Right.
Because
Make sure
time,
you train.
Especially if you run it real early, that could hold with you throughout your entire career.
And I think that just overall, like when you go to these camps, you need to understand what you're doing, and you need to understand the drills that you're going to be, whether it's the 40, whether it's the shuttle, even just lateral drills. And you need to understand what things for your position that you're going to go through and train for it. Just like someone would train for the NFL draft, right? You want to train for those things, so that way you're putting your best foot forward. Don't just wake up on the Saturday and be like, oh yeah, I'm going to go to this camp, this is my city, and I'm going to just give it a shot. I think that's a bad decision.
Okay. Good insight.
Yeah, totally agree.
Cap or Fact, you need to attend a big high school in order to get recognized.
Oh, that's cap. Okay. No. We can give so many examples of kids from not only like small high schools and, what people would consider a random state like North Dakota or Idaho or wherever it would be. No. You just need to ball out. They will find you. Like it is very rare these days with the internet and huddle and social media that a team will not find you. If you can ball, they'll definitely find you, because that goes back to something else we were talking about about, right? Every coach wants to find that guy. And so, and every assistant coach wants to go to their head coach and say, I found this guy, right? Like it is, no, they want to be able to find you. And so if you can play, it does not matter where you are, they'll find you.
Okay. And my last question. So cap or fact, for a parent, when you're talking to a coach in the evaluation process, are you trying to push for that offer so other schools can start to offer you as well?
Wait, should you push for the offer?
Like when you're talking to a coach, are you asking them am I an offer?
Oh, no, you should do that. That's fact. Yeah. I think that helps to clarify what your position is on their board. And that kind of goes to that other thing, what I was saying about, don't let them keep you in the DMs, get on the phone, get on the campus and get face to face, see if they're going to come to your school and evaluate you in person. It goes along those same lines. An offer is the best way to know that school is serious about your son and wants to actually move forward with your kid. So no, you definitely want to see if they're going to actually offer you want to, hey, I would be opposed to, hey, where do you see us on your board? Is a good question as well. Because not only does that let you know how serious they are, but it tells you kind of where you need to work, right? Like what's your competition looking like and that sort of thing. So no, I definitely am in favor of all of that.
Yeah. Because there's also a difference between offers and committable offers as well. So
I'm glad you mentioned that.
So I think it's important to ask that question as well. Like, is this an offer or is this a committable offer? If I wanted to come to this university, would you accept my commitment? Because sometimes it's an offer to get you on campus. It's an offer to evaluate you further. It's an offer to, hey, I'm offering to take you out on the first date and let's let's flirt around a little bit, but not really committing to putting a ring on it.
Yeah, and believe me, there are schools that's the strategy. I can name one. Georgia is a school that will do that to you. Now they can do it. I would caution this. They can actually do it because they are Georgia, but they will offer, and it's basically a camp offer. They want you to come out and camp, and then they basically they're going to then re-offer you at that camp if you perform in front of Kirby Smart. Ryan Day with quarterbacks at Ohio State. It's a very similar thing. He will not offer a quarterback unless he sees you throw in person. But in these cases, we're talking about the top of the top, and they get to choose who they get to choose. In that situation, the vast majority of schools are not like that.
I'm just glad you said that, because these colleges, they have a job to do as well. Like, that's what I want the parents to understand.
Right.
Like, it's okay to have that conversation with the coach. You don't have to go all the way to a campus, get there, and then don't talk to anybody. That makes no sense to me.
They definitely got a job to do, and as you can see, right, the success of these athletes is dependent on the success of these coaches. So like they're taking this thing very seriously, because this is how they feed their family. And as you can see in the way college is this year, they got a very short timeline to be successful. So they're trying to make the right decisions. All right, let's move on to some over and under. So this is basically overrated or underrated. I'm going to give you a series of questions. You let me know if it's over or under. Or sometimes it may just be, a flat. You ready?
I am ready.
Participation in all-star games. Is that overrated or underrated?
Ooh, I think it's become underrated. Okay. Because I feel like now you get so many kids that drop out, or even if they commit to an all-star game, they'll then drop out. Or kids that are already committed and don't think they need to do it. I think if you want to go out there and compete, if I were a kid and I was a top athlete and I get invited to one of these all-star games, I want to go compete against those other kids that people say are the best, right? And show that I'm a competitor. I don't think you're ever going to be hurt by going out and competing. I guess I shouldn't say that. If you go out there and you totally lay your head, you might. But then we might give you some grace, because then it may be that you went up against some real dogs, right? You never know. But in general, I think it's underrated. I think it's become underrated at this point.
No, that's a good point. You got to look at the risk reward factor. So if you're a top recruit, right, and you have multiple offers, and like you say, you go out there, the day wasn't your day, that may not have been a great decision. So let's, before we get to other questions, that actually bring me to another question, right? So when you look at it from that perspective, a top player, top recruit, someone that maybe already competed, like what is really the truly upside for them participating in an all-star game?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is if you're a kid that, like, say you're, and a good example of this maybe is last year's Under Armour is the game that I covered, the big All-Star game I covered. Jackson Cantwell, our number one player in the country, it was at that All-Star event with a few other really top offensive linemen, some other really good pass rushers. The reason he's number one is because he went out there and dominated. And we go back to the other question that we talked about doesn't matter what school you're at. He's in Nixa, Missouri, which is a smaller town. They play good ball, but it's a smaller town in Missouri. It's not in St. Louis. It's not in Kansas City, right? And so seeing him against those big time players and dominating them really boosted where his ranking was and kind of solidified what we thought was his place in those rankings. So there definitely can be upside in that. Keelan Russell was another one that really went out there and showed what he could do and became, I think, our number one quarterback at then the old rivals by the end of the process. So yeah, there's definitely times where guys can solidify or stamp where they are based on how they do at those events.
Love it. Love it. All right. Next one, over or under. I think this is a fan favorite. Exposure from 7v7 football. Is it overrated or underrated?
Man, that might be a push. It might be in the middle. It is definitely not underrated because you can get some highlights out there on 707 that really put you on the map. And part of it too is that anymore, man, and you mentioned, like, Ace and Izzy being on the same Boom team, and all of these teams have so many good players, so you're going up against good competition. Going out there and balling out against some of those kids can really put you on the map. So no, I'll stick with underrated on that. It is not overrated. I know it becomes a lightning rod with 7v7, and if it's actually real football, if people feel very strongly on both sides of the equation, we can do a whole show on that. But I think that I think under, because I think that you can really put yourself on the map in some of those big time tournaments.
Yeah, I agree. I think, depending on the position, I totally agree. I think it's one place, in the right 7v7. So you look at something like an overtime OT7, you got the opportunity to go against the best of the best talent all day, every game. So it gives you a good measuring stick on how you are as an athlete, where you stand amongst the national best talent, because in OT7, there's no plays off. You're playing the best of the best across the board for the most part.
Oh yeah, you're going to see all Power 4 guys when you go to one of those. You go to OT7. That's all you're going to see. It's a lot different than if you're like, not to pick on Kansas. I know random we think of them, but if you think of you're at a random weekend Kansas 707 tournament, it's not quite the same as being in overtime, right? So yeah, that's a good point.
All right, another one. The impact NIL have on athletes' college selection, is that overrated or underrated?
Yeah, boy, that's a good one.
Getting spicy.
That's tough. Yeah, because at the top of the heap, it's underrated because it can be a huge factor when we're talking about those top kids. When we're talking about those kids that are saying like the Rivals 300 or the top 150 players in the country, especially the quarterbacks, the offensive tackles, the pass rushers, your big time wide receivers. It's worth every bit of ink that we give it. And it is definitely some high stakes, high money stuff that is going on in those deals. So now in those cases, it's underrated. For your typical athlete, it's overrated because not every kid is getting, those sorts of deals. Right. But people would be, I still think people would be amazed at like how big some of these deals are, and like how much, what the new thing is about the schools now trying to pay kids to not go on visits to then flip. I think that's something that we've kind of danced around that, and we talk about it a little bit, but that is something that is happening a lot more than I think people realize, though it's still not necessarily stopping all these flips, and we're still going to get them.
Definitely.
Hey, athletes, if you're hearing, baby, hey, you better get in that gym. You better get in that gym because this is real business.
Oh, all right. Okay, Greg, I want you to leave.
I got one more.
Oh, you got one more?
Okay, one more.
My bad.
This is a good one, too. This is a good one. Rivals ranking influence on college recruiting. Is it over or underrated?
Boy, I would say that's a tough one too. You put me on the spot on that one. Because I'm going to say overrated at the risk of, angering my bosses, because I do think that in the end, even if you are not rated as highly as you think you should be on Rivals, you can still be recruited and go to a very good college that is going to set you up for a very good future. You can still get some good NIL dollars if we have you underrated in the ranking service. So I'm going to say it's overrated, but at the risk of angering the bosses. But also, I know with all the messages that I get from all of the athletes and parents out there, I know that they think that it's underrated and want us to rank everybody higher. But no, you can still have a very good situation even if we have underrated you in the recruiting
process.
That's
what's up. Hey, Greg, boss, y'all, I put him on the spot. You know what I'm saying? Don't. Right. He's just keeping it 1,000 there. It's a good man for the culture. He's just keeping it 1,000.
Yeah, okay? I had to keep it real with you.
All right, man. I want to leave you guys with this. So I want to leave our parents and our players full. So I want you to give us the 5 key secret ingredients for a 5-star gumbo to help your recruiting. What would those be?
Man, I think it would be go back to networking. The thing, like when you go to an event, make sure you introduce yourself. I will tell you, like, even you coming up to me and introducing yourself was great, and that's cool. But I also met your son with him coming up as well. That helps when you guys go up to people and network. And it doesn't have to just be your Rivals writers and all of that. If you're at an event with coaches and all of that, like some of these showcase events are, there's one in Detroit where a lot of coaches come out. As well, like going up and introducing yourself and networking, I think is one really big one. I think that having your best highlights at the beginning of your huddle film, I think that is definitely something that will help you. Being responsive on social media to both people like me, but also to more importantly to coaches. You'd be amazed at the amount of times that college coaches say, "Hey, I reached out to Johnny and he never hit me back." Like that does happen. And along those same lines, something that is a bigger deal that I don't think people always put 2 and 2 together on is be respectful to every coach and respond to every coach no matter what level they're at, because you do not know where they're going to be in a couple of years. You think about this. I'll give you one really good example. If you were a kid a couple of years ago that was giving Kirk Cignetti and his staff the cold shoulder when they were at James Madison, what's happening now if they're going to try to contact you when they're at Indiana and they're hot? So I'll leave you with that one, to make sure that you're respectful and nice to all of these coaches, because this business changes very quickly and you never know how things are going to shake out.
Man, that was fire. That was fire. So, hey, man, we really appreciate you taking the time out to speak with the Recruiting Podcast and really sharing your insights and expertise with us. I learned a lot, so I know our audience will learn a lot as well. Man, it's been a pleasure having you on, man. I hope that you have a blessed future and career. You're doing a phenomenal job, and just want to take our hats off and give you your flowers for the work that you're putting in around this young athletes, highlighting these guys, taking time out of your busy schedule to really go and dive deep and put these guys on a pedestal and do what you can do to get these kids the opportunity that you feel like they deserve and that we all feel like they deserve. So thank you so much for spending your time with the podcast. Can you drop your socials so that way we make sure that everyone's following you? What are your socials?
Yeah, I am at Greg Smith Rivals on both Twitter, X, and Instagram. That's basically where you can find me. Find all of my work over at rivals.com. And again, I appreciate you guys having me on and giving me the opportunity to speak about all of this. I do think that really I am passionate about helping these kids and making sure they get the opportunities that they need to get, and being able to tell their story. So I appreciate this as an extension of that, man. I thank y'all.
Thank you. And you have been recruited.
Yes, sir.